my co-host, Keith Harris, Marketing Director and Communications for Lensec. How are you, Keith?
Hey, Neil, I'm doing good. I missed out last week because of all the weather, but here we are. We're back. We're live again.
Yeah, we're live again. Luckily, we got some stuff in the can, some really exciting things to come, some really great guests, and we're always excited. And today's guest is really exciting for me, for sure, because we're going to talk about a topic that, when we get into technology like this, drones. Wow. But I'm excited to welcome to the program Sean Ahrens of Affiliated Engineers. Sean, thanks for stopping by. What's your perspective? How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Sean. Let's talk about, first of all, we like to always learn about the security background and then more about what your job entails. But first of all, the history of Sean, how did he get involved in security?
So, it's a really long story, but essentially I wanted to be a cop. I was in school at Western Illinois University to do that. Desert Storm ended. Really wasn't a great opportunity to become a cop, and the specific focus that I had, which was canine at that time, because all these handlers came back. And so I was looking for something to do. I had a computer science minor, and I started out with a small consulting group and set up their emergency preparedness documents online using Lotus Notes, for those that remember that cumbersome program. Subsequent to that, just kind of stayed in physical security since that time and been doing it for 22 plus years, working with, all sorts of clients, verticals, and exciting projects, both in the US and abroad.
That's great. Yeah, you get get to put your fingers into a lot of different things. But today we're going to talk about drones, right? What's happening in the drone world in regard to security?
Sure. Happy to have that discussion.
So, first of all, I guess, Sean, tell me specifically enough, what is a drone? Because we hear the word, it's a buzzword, right? It's definitely a buzzword in technology, and you hear about it definitely with the military and everything, but define what a drone is.
Well, it's interesting. So, I mean, if we look at the term drone's been used back for like 2010, 2011. It was predominantly used by the military. They, described it along with the terms with the predator. Since that time, companies like DJI came out with these aerial systems, basically RC flight craft that are battery operated. And the term drone is now stuck with those devices. But historically, drone has described an unmanned aerial vehicle or aerial system, UAS or UAV. With regards to the drones that we have today, some are unmanned. They can take GPS coordinates and do specific, very basic commands. That is like your commercial based aircraft, like the DJI and what have you. But predominantly, they have to be controlled by an operator.
And that is actually something that's important to note, because the operators have to be licensed. And I've got a friend who trains some folks on trains mostly law enforcement on drone operation and helps them get licensed. So not just anybody can go out and fly a drone in today's environment, because there has to be some licensing that takes place because of laws that have been put in place across the US and really around the world.
Right. Yeah. From a commercial perspective, if you're using the drone in a commercial capacity, yes. Hobbyists and what have you, not necessarily so.
So let's go from, we talked about drones, but they're used in a variety of ways by different people. But let's just talk about insecurity. How do people protect their buildings, their operation systems, and things like that using drones?
Drones are we're really starting to see how exciting and the possibilities that are with them, right? And, from a historical context, it's really the equivalent of when the Chinese introduced gunpowder and we had castles in medieval times, right? We have a new type of technology that can be used in a whole sorts of positive ways, but also can be used maliciously. I actually have a PowerPoint that has a whole bunch of imagery on drones, on the positives and negatives. If you give me a second, I probably could pull that up and kind of show your audience.
I'm sure having a visual of that would be fantastic.
Sure. Um, let me see here what I gotta do.
So while he is doing that, Keith, and waiting for that to be pulled up, I just think that, uh, Keith, this level of technology just has not really, we've not met it yet, Keith. We're still a ways away to see more and more what that technology is used for. Don't you?
There's been people playing with this and trying to working to advance it for years now. Like Sean said, for the last decade or more. And there's lots of folks working with it on a law enforcement and military end. But more commercial applications for security using drones requires a little bit more development of infrastructure and technology regarding drawing back some of the video from the drone, or being able to access that information live and on the fly. I've heard some people tell stories about as we grow the Internet of Things, getting some of that information together and being able to pull data back from drones so that a more proactive response can be enabled, maybe on a citywide system or on a region-wide basis, so that law enforcement can get a better idea of what's happening in certain areas.
It says I'm sharing my screen. Do you see anything?
You are. We're looking at your desktop.
Right.
You have more icons than I do.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Sometimes when you share screens, you have to pick multiple spots. Okay, we see
There we
it. Yeah.
All right. So what we have here, right here, is the. Let me see if I can minimize this. There we go. So what we have here is my FC-40 drone. I got this back in 2014. It's a DJI Phantom drone. I basically bought this for like $700. They're more expensive now. They're lighter now. But this one actually, I bought this with the promise of kind of looking at my roof and being able to take some aerial photography, as well as equipping it with a bug sprayer, which that project fell off the platform a little bit. But I think the most important thing to talk about is just why drones are a potential concern or a benefit. Is they're really simple to use. I mean, so if you follow my screen here, you got your operator. That operator, it communicates to a receiver on the board. The system has actually got an autopilot which ties to a GPS waypoint. That's why when you're flying a drone, that it doesn't, if the wind's blowing it or what have you, it stays fairly steady. And this is one of the defining elements behind a drone, which make it, that benefit or what have you, as compared to our traditional RC planes. Then you've got your motors, and then you've got an electronic control circuit and a battery. And so this basically is controlling how much voltage is going to those propellers, that motor, and it is driving the propulsion for the unit. On some of the positive sides, there's the bugs, the bug spray, taking on Asian Chinese hornet nest. Looking at, from a roof inspection, think about insurance, disasters, and what have you. The individual can actually take this drone, fly it out, and see that the house is flooded, and start processing insurance claim information, as opposed to waiting to everything dries up until they can go see it. We're using them in a counterproductive standpoint. This drone is pretty unique. They're using it to replant forests, so it actually flies a grid and drops acorns or seedlings where they have the best opportunity to germinate. We're using drones in farms, agriculture, tie them to FLIR devices, and we can see if the plant is under stress, if it needs water that we wouldn't normally see outside of that. From a life saving perspective, you can actually send off a drone. It can lock on to an individual and hone in and drop a buoy or what have you. Some of these drones are powerful enough to tow the person back in. So this would be very important from a riptide standpoint. This is a phenomenal application that I've seen in countries that are not so predominantly have healthcare available, like Africa and what have you. So injuries do occur, and there's tribes out there, and they need to be able to respond to this, suture, or have medical care available. And they're not necessarily going to get that immediately. So they call on their cell phone to a local hospital, and the hospital basically puts together a whole kit on procedure and what you need to do and set up the process. And then the drone basically flies out there. It's a one-way drone. It flies all the way out there, and then at a later date, it's collected by medical staff that will visit that tribe at a certain time.
Gosh, could you imagine dropping a defibrillator device on scene where somebody's having an issue, a medical issue, and you need to get something there quick before the paramedics can arrive on scene? Could be a life-saving measure.
That's absolutely right, and so I think that's really positive. Firefighting, being able to put out fires that wouldn't normally be reached. We're doing that with different types of firefighting technologies that are available, literally like fire bombs that basically have these chemical that basically kill the fire by taking away the oxygen. This is we were talking about home security and building security. So facilities, they were talking about, flying drones and what have you, but now this is really becoming applicable for high worth residentials, high worth individuals with high end residences with, significant amount of land area. We can actually have a drone go out there, fly the perimeter. If it sees something, it communicates back. The promise of 5G gives the ability for us to produce 1080 video back, quite seamlessly.
Then you could set that one out next to the spa, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you equip it with weapons, and you're all set.
Right.
The problem with drones is, like I said, with any technology, it can be misused. And regrettably, in 2014, I initially wanted to see the capabilities of this drone because I saw the potential for its misuse. As a security professional, the propeller on the top of my head is wound pretty tight, so I'm always constantly looking for other threats that are out there, and threats abound. So in 2015, this 18-year-old kid put a gun on a drone and fired it repeatedly. It's not a violation of any FAA rules. It wasn't. There were any laws that were broken. He simply just did it because he wanted to try if he see if he could do it. The stability of the drone platform gives us the opportunity to do that because you can fire the weapon, and there's the aircraft will calibrate itself based on that GPS coordinate. So it basically brings it right back in. Over here, we've got basically a drone that's sniffing cellular signals. It's looking for cellular frequencies. We got a guy that put together a program using Raspberry Pi on how to deface posters and what have you using a drone with a can of spray. This one over here is one that's a Wi-Fi. So you fly this drone, you park it on the top of your target's balcony or what have you, and it becomes a repeating network now to basically see if they can compromise.
So John, these are all ones that are not done for the best situation. They're utilized in a bad way.
No, they're not done at all for the best situation. You got a drone here. This is around 2016. This is where the FAA said, whoa, wait a minute. The drone's flying over a plane. And so they started seeing that the potential impact on aircraft. Oh, then you got other people who are like, hey, what else can we do with this? Well, let's see if we can equip it with a law rocket launcher.
Oh, goodness.
You got companies that are tying gimbals on this with automatic rifles. You've got home hobbyists that are basically building on a firearm, similar to what that 18-year-old did. This individual is doing it differently, though. He's got a separate servo that is pulling that trigger. And then we've got, what we're seeing in the Middle East. These drones are being tested. So this is that DJI drone that, I showcased, my FC40, very similar to that. And they're equipping it with explosives. And they're using, to stabilize the explosive in flight, they're using, basically the back end of a racquetball to stabilize so that it won't fly off point when it's dropped. So they're dropping grenades with these things now. So there's a whole bunch of negative things, and there's a lot of positive things. ultimately, the challenge we have right now is the FAA is trying to negotiate this problem, and really, Pandora's out of the box. And I predict we're going to start seeing some effects of drones here probably in the next 3 to 5 years, because all of this stuff, all of these modifications, this equipment, what have you, these hobbyists, they posted on the internet for everyone to see how they did it, what the programming was to do it, what equipment they're using. So we're basically eliminating the guesswork and the issues with kind of the repeat, fail, this didn't work, try again process through a crowdsourced type of approach.
Yeah, you have this when new technology comes along. People are curious in nature, and sometimes they're nefarious in nature, and they try to see what they can get away with. And in these situations, you just don't know what people are going to do and how they're going to try new things. And that's why lawmakers come along and make new laws and put in regulations to help enforce the use of some of these items, to stop people from doing bad things.
And the FAA did that in 2016. They limited the height to 400 feet. You only can fly at line of sight, all these other different things. But really, and they got a new rule that just came out. It's a simple rule. It's 400 pages long. But the challenge becomes that it's really, there's not a lot that can be done. All these rules are just for the honest people that want to stay honest. They don't do anything about someone who is contemplating using these things for illegitimate activity.
Yeah. So only FAA rules, regulations are for people that want to use them to protect their facility or to fly for fun. They're not looking at the people that are just not going to ignore the laws and do whatever they want to do. That's what it sounds like you're saying, Sean.
I believe the FAA has put these rules together because they know they have to do something. They know it's not if, but when, and they need to do something, right? But at the end of the day, the rules that I've seen thus far don't preclude an aggressor from circumventing that and creating an event.
Wow. You have to really be cautious about the approach here, and make sure that good laws are put into place and that regulations are made. It really just, they have to really take a nice approach and cover the bases there, don't they?
Yeah, the big challenge that they have, and I'm surprised they did not authorize this, but you've had individuals that were peeping on their daughters in California, and people have actually damaged the flight craft, and that's a federal violation. You're breaking federal law when you do that because it's a flight craft. And I would have expected that they would have introduced something to allow permissible means to, you know, prevent the flight craft from operating, or setting it down, or having an interdiction device or what have you, and that has not come to pass. There's a number of companies out there that are doing it, but right now a building owner can't go and buy a drone interdiction device and be either compliant with FCC or FAA federal laws.
Hmm. Let's shift gears a minute and take a look at some of the surveillance applications for physical security that you see. How can drones be used in a good way to help supplement an existing physical security deployment, in a positive manner, bring around a more proactive approach for response and law enforcement?
So, I mean, we could take it from, a dirigible in, you know, down in South America, in the middle of the jungle. You've got, companies that are mining down there, and they need to have, a understanding of their environment, what's going on. If there's people, coming, tying that to FLIR equipment, thermal equipment, and seeing who's in the perimeter, powerful. Uh, Pipelines, being able to survey pipelines, before we did it with planes, there's no reason drones couldn't do that. tying that to machine learning to look for aberrant activities that are not consistent with template images. I think that's also a strong possibility for drones. I think the other opportunities for drones really tied to, those remote infrastructures that we have. So, you have there was a big thing about 5G, right? We saw the event that happened in Tennessee where the person detonated his RV. And it seems like it was around that whole 5G
Right.
conspiracy or what have you. And a number of cell towers were damaged as a result of, these people going out there and destroying these cell towers that was apparently equipped with 5G. You've also got just nuisance issues with people going out there, critical infrastructure. When we get the drone technologies that are coming, we haven't seen the full breadth of drones. There's battery technologies, there's motor technologies, communication technologies that really will permit, drones to fly in low airspace and support, a wide variety of infrastructure review. We could go out and look at critical infrastructure from electrical switchgear equipment. We could fly them out to those cellular towers in remote locations and see if there's been any tampering. And again, this would all be done autonomously through, edge-based AI tied to 5G platforms that will provide the analytics to alert on, hey, I see a ripped fence or what have you. Are we there yet? No, but the promise is there. I believe we're going to probably see something probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
You were talking a little bit earlier before we started the broadcast about 5G and how that could potentially affect capabilities for drones. What do you see coming in the future there?
Oh, wow, 5G. So, I mean, the possibility of flying a drone autonomously on 5G is significant. The other real big benefit to 5G is the video quality that we'll get back. So you get 720, 1080, depending on, how many miles you're out or what have you. I think we're about 3 miles is the max we could get
Right.
720. With 5G, it's fairly unlimited. Now, our operating area is really tied to the battery. So as we see battery technologies improve, and there's some really cool battery technologies out there, things that are based on graphene and what have you. But moreover, when we looking at motor technologies, we waste a significant amount of energy in converting battery energy to mechanical energy, right? So if we can find ways to enhance those motors to make them more efficient, those flight craft could go very, very, very far. And this is just the rotors that we're talking about, the quadcopters. That's really what the drone word has been assumed. But there are many other types of drones out there. No one talks about dirigibles. No one talks about fixed wing. Fixed wing can go really far. The big challenge with that is it's not tied to GPS. So if you get a big wind gust, it's not going to do very well. But these are all really great opportunities to, make things more efficient.
Right.
But with that technology comes the potential that someone is going to say, hey, I could use this for a malicious intent.
You know,
Um,
I was going to keep.
I
Mhm.
was just going to say you mentioned the improved machines and improved efficiency of a mechanical operation in a drone. That's key and that's important to reference. But also the other side is batteries are getting better,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so flight times become longer.
Right.
Uh, Batteries become lighter in weight, so your payload could increase. There's a whole lot of things that become part of that future technology that could be developed to make a drone more efficient in delivering a payload of any sort.
That's absolutely right. And I that is the one big thing that the FAA was trying to address is the weight, weight to aircraft ratio, how much weight it can carry. And there are hobbyists out there that have drones that I've seen that are carrying 100 pounds,
Wow.
beer kegs, what have you. Now, you think about that, and how do we address that type of threat? Moreover, how do we just address a drone that's carrying grenades and it basically pulls the pins on them and drops them Or, just think about this, from a non, no threat, no bomb, no explosive. Let me fly my drone over a stadium at 100 miles an hour, and it's got, maybe half a pound, or not half a pound, but maybe 4 ounces of flour.
Mm.
And I just dump the flour on the stadium.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody, all we need to do is just have that panic. It's a biological attack. And, the injuries that would occur from that, because life safety code does not address anything other than an orderly evacuation. So in those types of scenarios, an orderly type of evacuation, a panicked evacuation, and we see some of the same injuries that would occur when we didn't have life safety code programs.
Now, also, Sean, what do you see as trends going to happen next 5 years in this industry for security using drones?
Well, I think drones are going to be much more prominent, especially for that critical infrastructure, because we don't have to go drive out to those locations. We can actually see those locations. It's really all just dependent on how efficient or how efficient these battery technologies and these motor technologies and the promise of 5G and what have you. I think there's also going to be a need for some higher level of communication between these drones. Like, I don't want someone stealing someone else's drone and using it for malicious purposes.
Mhm.
So, I think there's opportunities for encryption, handshaking, and that drone only responds, and it eliminates challenges around GPS spoofing and things that we've seen. I mean, that's how we lost our whatever gajillion-dollar drone in Iran. Was they basically made it think it was landing in the U.S. when it wasn't, or not the U.S., but they made it think it was landing at a U.S. operated base in the Middle East, and it was landing in Iran.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you also have, in practical real world applications, drone manufacturers and companies that are working on developing self-docking drones that can dock for recharge. You have tethered drones that are providing live power to a drone while it's flying. There's lots of things like that that are excellent for remote applications. And then add a Wi-Fi hotspot, maybe with 5G, maybe with 4G, and then you have a live view in a remote scenario of what's happening without having somebody physically there to fly the drone.
Yep. I do see I see more positives than negatives. But when we look at, like, from a risk matrix, to your point, Neil, when we look at a risk matrix standpoint, we look at probability and impact. What would be the impact of a drone carrying a flamethrower, which has already been done since 2015, and or a weapon and flies into a populated area? I mean, the media behind it would be so significant that everyone would have this knee-jerk reaction. But the positive sides of it, I mean, we could save a lot more lives with, basically flying someone out in a riptide scenario. How many people die in riptides because the other person goes out to try to save them and they wind up caught in the riptide and everybody dies? Now we can use these drones to fly out there, do that, bring the person back in, tow them back in. These are all possibilities. From a security perspective, it's all going to be tied to perimeter, and certainly high worth individuals want this technology because they've got huge areas. Now think about that for a standpoint, from a moment, right? Do I really need to have a fence if I have a drone, right? So now the drone can fly around. We'll put in, a fiber optic cable underneath the ground, right? I don't necessarily care that animals are stepping over it anymore, because the drone's going to fly out there. It's going to detect it. It's going to see it's a deer. It's not going to do anything. But if it's not a deer, it's going to start to follow the person broadcasting, "You are now in protected property. You are now in protected property. Please leave. The police have been called." I mean, that's going to be, for someone, that's going to be a realization as like, holy cow, I'm in Terminator.
Exactly. And that's coming. All right, Sean,
That,
where's the best place we can connect with you? Because I know we're running out of time, but where can we connect with you? Where's the best place?
you grab me on LinkedIn. Always willing to connect with anybody. If you want to reach out to affiliated engineers, you can grab me through there. I'm located in Chicago, and happy to continue this discussion. Or if anybody has any additional questions, they can email me. Maybe you can provide it to on the
Yeah, absolutely. And
presentation.
this
It'll
is
be at the bottom of the recording.
Awesome.
so
Right.
it's really nice, Keith. And then we got to let him go. Is we really like about Sean is he brings such a new technology to discuss that we learned a lot about drones today, didn't we, Keith?
Absolutely. It's fascinating to think about what is coming in the next few years in regard to drone technology.
Well, you get your Amazon orders. It's going to be skeet shooting with prizes.
There you go.
All right, we're excited about it. Well, I guess so. Hopefully for the good, not the bad. All right, so guys, thanks again for tuning in, and thanks again, Sean. And this was again, What's Your Perspective? Go to lensec.com live to catch up with all the live episodes, and make sure you like and share this video. And take care, guys. And we'll talk again next week. So take care, guys.
Take care.